Hello, everyone. We are on the It's the Scott of It All channel. That's the name of my channel, Wendy. And I wanted to introduce you to an old friend of mine, Wendy Eley Jackson. And I've known Wendy since, I think I've known Wendy since I was 12 and Wendy was 10. And I might have been 13, but I think I was 12. Wendy's mother, Dorothy, and her sister Jeanette, is my mother's best friend. And that's how Wendy and I know each other. Wendy's father is or was a Tuskegee Airman, and Wendy's husband is Maynard Jackson III. And I think yesterday I was making a cocktail on my YouTube channel and I kept saying Maynard Jackson Jr. And in the back of my head, I was like, that don't sound right. And then I was like, no, the mayor was Maynard Jackson Jr. And then at one point I said, I just know him as Buzzy. Like, I don't,
Right.
Right. I don't call him Maynard. It's just
Right.
Buzzy. So,
Right.
I wanted to bring Wendy on just to kind of talk about some things, her life growing up with the Tuskegee Airmen as a father. And then I wanted to talk about the documentary, Maynard, that you did, and the more recent documentary you did about The Invitation. So, what was it like growing up with just so everyone knows, we called Wendy's father Eley. What was it like growing up with Eley as your dad and his historic figure, contribution?
My dad was a talker.
Yes.
And
he was a worker too.
He was not a lazy man at all. But here's what's interesting about Daddy. My father graduated from high school at age 16. He was academically, he was and more than academically, but he was a brilliant man, right?
Yeah.
And he was born in 1927 in Harlem, New York, to two parents who had moved from between Norfolk and Virginia Beach, Virginia, right? And they eloped, and so my dad's father died when my father was 12.
Oh, wow.
Of an accident. He had fallen, hit his head, developed a blood clot overnight, and just didn't wake up. So my father has always grown up as, when you think about birth order, he was the oldest of three young boys to a very young mother, my grandmother, Mary Elizabeth. And he's always been a person of, the words that he would use were duty, honor, commitment, responsibility. And, he was a much older dad.
Yes.
So my father, when I came along, technically speaking, my father was old enough to be my grandfather.
Yeah.
And
your dad was also very strict.
He was very strict. Very strict. I tell my husband all the time, my dad was a girl dad, but dad used to, he was very aware of the perception that society would hold women to. So for example, in high school, he would say, there's nothing open in the city of Atlanta after 12 o'clock for people your age but legs, and yours won't be one of them. And when we talk about strict, we're talking about very, very decisive rules, like I had to be home by 12, but that didn't mean coming in the door at 12. That means I should be in my bedroom, seated or getting ready to go to bed at 12, right? So that means I'm really in, technically speaking, at 11:55.
Right.
And I remember one time closing my door, maybe a little too hard, and coming home, my father had removed the entire door. He was just like, I shouldn't say this, but he's gone, and if he reprimands me, it's definitely going to be through the paranormal. But he used to say, I buy the toilet paper you wipe your ass with. You don't own anything in this house.
I've had, honestly, I've had a similar situation with my dad too. Like my dad made me, like I was threatening to run away for whatever reason because I couldn't have my way. My dad, I was in the garage. My dad said, you don't own anything you're wearing, take it all off. Next thing I knew, I was in the garage butt naked.
Oh, you know, that type of, it is a reverential kind of fear. It's not a fear that they're going to kill you, but it's the reverence that my father demanded. And he used to always tell me, I can't be your friend when you need me to be your father.
Right.
And I will honestly, it took me 41 years to really understand why he would say those things, because, you know, I felt like, you know, he was a cool dad, but he wasn't like some of my other friends' dads.
Yeah.
And he would be like, no, you need me. And what he was really was saying was, if I make you my friend, when I ask you to do something, that level of respect is not there anymore.
That's right. Yeah. One of the fondest memories I have of your dad, and I actually think this was the first time I met him, was we came to Atlanta. We came to go to Six Flags, but it was actually your dad's birthday. And I remember on the day of your dad's birthday, your dad was in the yard cutting the grass. And I remember standing at the window watching him. And I think I said to Jeanette, I was like, it's his birthday. Like, why is he cutting the grass? So, and I remember, like, so what you said about responsibility and commitment, like he didn't care that it was his birthday. Like he was a very quiet kind of, just matter of fact man. Like he spoke, but his tone was always very even. And he always he made his point, and I don't ever remember him I maybe remember him raising his voice at us once, but I don't, like, it wasn't like he was, you couldn't tell he was angry. Right. He just was saying what he needed to say.
Right. Daddy was my fondest memory. I don't want to cry.
Oh.
I spent time doing makeup.
I'm sorry.
So my fondest memory of Daddy is, believe it or not, it's just he and I going to Piccadilly to eat weekly in Greenbrier Mall in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I think because, one, Daddy could talk to anybody excessively, but it was also our time for him to kind of unlock what's going on with Wendy, right? Yeah. What's Wendy thinking? Does Wendy understand that the reason why I have to travel is not because I want to be in a plane every day, but it's because I've got to take care of her and keep our household going.
Right.
But I will say this, when I think about, excuse me, he protected me from so much.
Yeah.
And actually, in his last days, one of the things he said was, where I failed you was I didn't prepare you for people to be mean to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you know, like one of the things that I've had conversations with my parents about is, I don't know why I told myself this, but I told myself that getting older, my life would get easier. And that is so not true. It is not true. And the same stuff that you deal with in high school and in middle school, you still deal with as an adult. Like you're still, like the stories you tell yourself still exist in your head. They act themselves out differently as adults, but it's still the same stuff, you know, like because people have more weapons in their arsenal, you know, as an adult, and they have more resources to use those weapons. So Um, but you're right. Like my parents never prepared me for any of that stuff because I thought it all would just dissipate. Like once
Right.
I hit 21, all of this goes away. Like, and that's just not, it's not real. It's not, and it's really one of the reasons why I battle with depression and all of those kinds of things because, you know, I I consider myself to be a smart person, and you know, so when I can't figure something out, I beat myself up for not being able to figure it out. Um,
I'm
do
very
you?
similar. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that you and I have always had like a kindred kind of relationship. And
Absolutely.
it's been unspoken, but it's like we're connected to each other.
You know what, Scott? I don't even consider you. When I speak of you, I call you my cousin. Um,
Oh,
because in my life, my formative years, you were there,
right.
right?
Yeah.
You were there alongside with um, Angela and Raymond and Jeanette. And when we would go to Port St. Joe, or go wherever we were going, um, it was
We
us,
we
right?
grew up together, right?
Grew up
Yeah.
together, right?
Yeah, it's true. Um, were you aware of like the historic contribution of your dad? And I just so everyone knows, because when you talked about your dad's career and flying off, so Wendy's father was a pilot for Eastern Airlines for like, did he retired with Eastern? Yes.
Ended up retiring from FAA.
Oh, okay.
So um, my father got his pilot's license in 1943,
Okay.
class 44, class 44D. So 1944. And he continued to fly until a month before his 85th birthday. He
Oh,
maintained
wow.
every rating. Is he had his ATP, which is the transport rating for commercial uh, pilots. He could fly on land and sea. The only thing that Dad didn't have an aeronautical license to do was to go to the moon.
Oh,
And
wow.
so to answer your question, I realized him being a Tuskegee Airman became a big deal
Right.
um, when the HBO movie Tuskegee Airman came out.
Okay.
And I remember watching it saying, well, that's not true. No, that's wrong.
Right.
They embellished that. Nope, that didn't happen.
Right.
Um, Interesting enough, my dad was the national historian for the Tuskegee Airmen for many years. And to this day, I have maybe 72 original, never seen photos, or haven't been seen since 1946 photos of General Benjamin O. Davis, both
Uh-huh.
junior and senior. Um, what I call the big icons, Roscoe Draper, who was one of the instructors for the Tuskegee Airmen, Sherman Rose, Chief Alfred Anderson. Um, you know, there's so many of them. I grew up around nothing but Black pilots. We're talking about men that had been flying since World War II, right?
Yeah.
And even before the war, because they were not taught by white instructors. They were taught the primary phase of instruction in Moton Field in Tuskegee, Alabama, was taught by Black men that
Right.
had flying.
Right.
These guys were, you know, these were just
What's
dads.
What's interesting about that, so when my friends discovered that my aunt was, a part of Hidden Figures, some of my friends asked me this, the same question I just asked you, was I aware? And I said, no, I don't think so, because for them, they're just living their lives. They're
Right,
not, and they're doing their job. Like,
right,
so you don't get to understand the historical contribution as the nephew or the daughter. Like, you just see people doing what they're supposed to be doing,
right.
so you don't really know like all of that backstory. It's just I mean, you're proud of it and you value it,
Right.
but you're not in the moment, you're not aware of it.
Not at all. Not at all. You know, that movie came out, so HBO did their rendition, and Malcolm Jamal Warner was in it, and my father was one of probably, you know, if they had social media during that time, Daddy would have shut that movie down. He would have shut it down. Um, you know, he was a historian by nature, but I remember before he passed, I was just like, how do you want to be remembered? And he says, I'm more than a pilot. I'm an instructor pilot, because it's one thing to be able to do the craft, but it's a better thing to be able to teach another generation on, and being able to pass that knowledge on.
Yeah.
So
Pay it forward.
he paid it forward in spades. I can't tell you how many commercial airliners I've been on, black, white, whatever, for whatever reason, if a pilot decides to look at the manifest. And when I book my ticket under my full name, and they see that name Eley, and I've been called, Wendy Eley Jackson or Wendy Eley, remain on the plane, and I'm thinking, okay. I know I didn't do nothing wrong. Who's coming? And it would just be the pilot wanting to say, do you know Roy Eley? And I was like, that was my father. And I would get a hug and say, your father taught me to fly. And I just wanted to say thank you. And so, he was beloved, black, white, it didn't matter. I will say, I probably actually have had more white pilots tell me, your father taught me how to fly.
Oh, wow.
That was his gift. That's where he felt the safest, was in the air. And when he was on the ground, I think it was about responsibility, duty. I've got this daughter, I've got this, I've got life to happen. But in the air, he was free.
Yeah. So growing up, you grew up in the Greenbrier area of Atlanta, which is really a historically Black area, historically upper middle class, affluent area. And you went to school with Maynard Jackson III. You all have known each other since kindergarten. First grade. Okay. And you are now husband and wife. I sat on the first row begrudgingly of your wedding because Jeanette and no one wanted to sit on the first row. So when I arrived, they were like, Scott, sit on the first row. I was like, what? Why am I sitting on the first row?
You're all pictures.
And I think I remember when we were kids, outside of you saying that you were going to marry Prince, the other person, do you remember that?
I do.
Because Angie was going to marry, what I was going to say, because Angie was going to marry Michael Jackson. You were going to marry Prince. And the other person, second to Prince, was Buzzy. Even when we were kids.
That is so crazy. I don't know if he knows that, but I have had I would say not necessarily an Eros kind of love for him, but he's always been my friend. When I say, and I don't mean playmate, I mean someone that I could bear as a kid. I could tell the truth to.
Yeah.
As a kid, he sought to protect me, even in first grade. When the other boys wanted to be fresh, he was like, if somebody's gonna be fresh with her, it's gonna be me. And his name is on my, my first and second grade report card, not for good reasons, because I was talking to the class. But he was there. And so, for years our lives happened, and for us to circle back, and our dating to marriage was 6 months.
Right. But, so I will say something without revealing too much personal stuff, but what you said about he's always been a protector, I think you've been a protector of him too.
No doubt. No doubt. I, you know, there's one or the there's and I don't want your audience to think I'm name dropping because I'm not. It's just
No,
that
no.
I'm from Atlanta. Let me say this. I'm from Atlanta. I'm from Southwest Atlanta. I was, you know, Atlanta Public Schools. But there's one person that truly relates to my husband more than anybody else, and that's the son of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and that's Dexter King. And Dexter said to me, it was at my sister-in-law Brooke's 50th birthday. And Dexter and his wife had come, and, you know, he has a real love. Well, the Kings have a real love for the Jacksons, but he said, when you're grown up and you have a parent or parents that the world knows,
yeah,
that have made iconic differences, you live in a different light that other people can't understand.
yeah, it's true.
You know, and so he always has, and even today, he has this huge affection because he's like, it's hard growing
Yeah.
up when the shoes that people expect you to fill are so large, but all you want to
And
do
you're busy just trying to figure out who you are.
Right.
And being a teenager with your hormones. I mean, all of that stuff and all these expectations are heaped onto you. Like, it's really, yeah, I get that.
And so I think my protection of my husband is not because I think people want something from him. I'm very aware, I'm acutely aware of knowing what their expectations in their minds are of him.
Right.
And I know he's not he's not a gossip.
Yeah.
He's not a liar.
Yeah.
Well, not about most things. Did you break that? No. Well, maybe yes. Okay. It's one of he's not a liar. He doesn't pretend to be something that he's not. You know, when you've grown up and coming home and you've got Sammy Davis Jr. sitting at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Or Sidney Poitier, or your parents are out with the first prime minister of Israel, Ben-Gurion. His life experiences have just been, presidents, governments, the stuff that people love now to take part in. I watch certain things. That wasn't, I won't say that it wasn't special. It was just a way of life for him.
It was right. Yeah.
And so I think sometimes when people have expectations, even some of his family members, not his immediate family, but they have this high expectation and they don't realize what his dad wanted for him and what his mom wants for him is just for him, for their children to be happy, whole, and happy, and to, do you. But whatever you do, just be the best at it. And so I have a fierce protection of his privacy.
Right.
And that's, I think he appreciates that.
Let's talk about how, because I think that we've talked about the love for your father, and we've talked about some of the mistruths or embellishments of the Tuskegee Airman movie on HBO. And I want to segue into like how you got into filmmaking and how, because I think that's those are the ties of the love of your father, the embellishments of the Tuskegee Airmen, the love of Buzzy and his family, and how you landed on making the documentary Maynard.
Daddy and I bonded over films.
Yeah.
We were avid. I was telling, I'm also a professor at University of California, Santa Barbara, and I was telling, and I teach screenwriting and crew production, and I was sharing with my students that I grew up, watching black and white movies.
Yeah.
We had a lot of TVs. I don't know how many televisions the average person had, but I always knew that we had a lot.
Yeah.
Like just in every
upstairs,
room.
downstairs, they were
upstairs, downstairs, kitchen.
Yes.
Yes, better. And there's TVs everywhere. And so, and we always had cable. I remember when cable came to be, but we always had cable. We always had HBO. We always had Cinemax. I think at one time we even had the Playboy channel, but I digress. But that's how we bonded. And as a fierce lover of history, my dad had a voracious appetite for history, as do I. I didn't just watch TV, but I watched a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Watched a lot of movies with historical context, let me just say that. And so after I came out of school, I thought I wanted to go to law school, but then understanding that was probably more of an idea or a want that my father had for me, just because he wanted, he felt like maybe that would be stable, just trying to offer and give me opportunities. But I remember I had a professor named Dr. Jeanette at UC Berkeley, and she said, what is it that you could do forever? And no matter how hard you worked, you don't think that you would just get tired and switch careers. And I was like, make movies, I suppose. And that ended up, as a result of that, my decision to go work for Sony Pictures Television, and at the time, Columbia Pictures TV and TriStar TV. We were in the same building. We were owned by Sony, but we were two different television divisions. And I worked for a woman by the name of Helen Verno, who was the executive vice, she's still the executive vice president of Sony Pictures TV long form, which is long form means made for television movies, right? Now we know it is streaming.
Right. Oh, okay.
It's called long form, made for television movies, and I loved it. Now it's called development, but I would read scripts. I would write coverage for those scripts. Every Tuesday, I would go out to the newsstand about 5 a.m. in Los Angeles and go through People Magazine, Us, Entertainment Weekly, looking for stories, true stories that I could highlight, put on my boss's desk and say, I think this might be a good story here. And I think the first story that I did find was there was a case of a girl named Amy Fisher in Long Island. And she was a teenager who tried to kill, she was having an affair with a married man, and she tried to kill his wife.
The Long Island Lolita.
The Long Island Lolita. That was my first find. And we ended up doing there was 3 of them done. Let me say this. I think NBC did one, CBS did one, ABC did one, but ours was with Alyssa Milano playing Amy Fisher.
Oh, I remember that.
I loved it. And so I didn't know how long it would take me to become an actual screenwriter myself, but that just kind of anything with historical context, right? It does well for me, and I've really enjoyed it.
So, and then did you and Buzzy talk about doing Maynard, or how did you develop that?
The way this came about, we were lying in bed one day, and somebody was saying something on YouTube about the city of Atlanta was making a film commission. But he kind of sat up and it was just like, no, this isn't new. And at the time, our friend Kasim Reed was mayor.
Right.
And he was like, no, this precedes him. Because my dad did this whole music and entertainment. He did this, the city of Atlanta kind of do a report, a 6-month study on what the economic impact, if Atlanta were to embrace this, what would be the direct spend economic impact would be on Atlanta, and how Maynard was very masterful of what would happen in Georgia. And so from that point forward, when he sat up and said that, he says, I want to do a documentary about my dad. And I was like, okay. And so I said, let's have this conversation with your sister, Brooke. And so we called Brooke, and Brooke said, well, if you guys are going to do this, it's going to have to be on the level that Dad would, Dad was a man of excellence. And so it just can't be kind of no B kind of film.
Right.
Well, and so a dear friend of ours, Winsome Sinclair, who had worked and done casting for Spike Lee and Steven Spielberg, she was just like, "Hey, you know, have you ever heard of Sam Pollard?" And Sam had just won a Primetime Emmy for doing Slavey by Another Name.
Okay.
And I was like, absolutely, you know, absolutely. Because in my mind, the first person I thought of actually was Spike Lee. And so when someone was like, you know, Sam Pollard is the Spielberg, if you will, of documentaries. And so she reached out to Sam, and Sam, of course, knew because he was a professor at NYU and is distinguished, and he had already been nominated for 2 Academy Awards and won 7 Primetime Emmys and 4 Peabody Awards at that time. He already knew who Maynard was. And so he said yes. And that
does he live here in Atlanta?
He doesn't. Sam at the time was living in New York.
Oh, okay.
And so most of our crew, Winsome Sinclair, Henry Adebanejo, who was our DP, Daphne McWilliams, Sam Pollard, our core crew came out of Spike Lee's original crew.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And so we brought them, they were all based in New York. Myself and Maynard were, you know, producers, and then my sister-in-law, 2 of my sister-in-laws, my brother-in-law, and Winsome Donald, Autumn Bailey, and then my husband's cousin Carl Carter. They came on, and Dolly Turner, who was a huge piece. I don't know if it would have done as well on the back end had it not been for Dolly. And I have to shout her out. Dolly Turner, you are the absolute best. Because it's one thing to have a film, but you've got to know how to market it. And it's got to give it the legs after it's in the can. And so
is she responsible for getting it on? Because a friend of mine was on a Delta plane and said that they watched the movie or something, and they reached out to me and they said, "Don't you know?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I'm friends with them." And they said, please let them know that. And I think I sent that to you, that I love the movie.
Well, Dolly didn't do that part. We had a great relationship with Delta Airlines when Delta was, and here's a little known fact, now that everybody's in an uproar about Delta changing their policy around the Sky Lounge.
Yeah, I got that the other day. It's like, oh my
Everybody's
God.
like, there needs to be a new airline because they need to have people at all levels. I'm like, no, that's actually the point.
Yeah, right.
Everybody can't have access, or if you want the access, you can have it, but you're gonna
pay for it. That's right.
You're gonna pay for it. But Delta was a regional airport. Yeah. And it was Maynard that said to Delta, hey, we're going to build a new airport. And if you consider making Atlanta your hub, your headquarters, we can talk about a long-term relationship. Because at the time it was Delta, Eastern, Republic Airlines, Transamerica, Pan Am. You had all these airlines, but Delta wasn't the American. Wasn't the force that it is now.
Right. Yeah.
And so that actually was a very organic relationship, as with the other people that helped to bring it to fruition. Coca-Cola North America, they were huge in terms of bringing it into fruition. The Southern Company, Chick-fil-A, Macy's, the H.J. Russell, the Herman Russell family, Jackmont Hospitality, which is a family-owned company run by Dan Halpern, who's also one of the founders, as well as my sister-in-law. Ariel Investments, I have to thank them, which includes Melody Hobson. Those persons, Suzanne Shank, I could go on for days. The movie's dedicated to Lavette Russell. Without her tireless dedication in helping us to really
Wendy,
get it done.
I haven't given you an Oscar. You
I'd like to thank a little piece of gold. Now, this is recorded, so you know you put this out there and be like, we helped her. So.
I'm just messing with you because that's how you were sounding like. I'd like to thank, and I'm like, the Academy. I'm like,
hey, wait a minute, that's that Dolly Turner programming. Don't forget to mention these people. Yeah, which is but that's how that came into fruition.
So, and then the movie The Invitation, which I don't know what it's about, but I know what it's about. Like I saw the picture or the promo picture, and I was like, oh, this is about the links. I assume. Okay, and so do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So last fall, producer of the film, Cheryl Williamson, reached out to me and was like, hey, you know, the links, I am a link, and the links want to do a documentary. And that was really right on the heels of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated doing, my friend Deborah Riley Draper had directed the feature-length documentary, 20 Pearls.
Oh, okay.
And so, the links decided, hey, we want to do something that really kind of cements who we are in history. Most people don't know we are technically a small organization of 17,000 women and over 300 chapters, but we are the largest donors, nonprofit donors to the.
Wait, I'm gonna correct. So it's 17,000 African American women.
17,000 African American women.
Right.
And 300 chapters that include Jamaica and South Africa and Bahamas and in the UK. So, you know, it's, at first they wanted a feature length, but they didn't have the budget for a feature length, which is fine. And so we ended up doing it as a short. So, but the deal was, how do you do 75? How do you encapsulate 75 years into 32 minutes?
Oh, wow. Is that the cutoff for a short?
The short cutoff is typically 40 minutes.
Okay.
But if you wanted to make festivals, the shorter the better. So like my editor, David Shirker, was like, this really needs to be 16 minutes. And I was like, these women are not gonna go for 16 minutes. That's not happening. And I brought on Henry Adebanejo again to be the DP for that. And I had a student named Marcello Freshna, who did animation for me. Another guy named Tyrone Jackson, I pulled some of my Atlanta folks, did the score for it. And Kimberly Sweet, who is an award-winning journalist out of Jackson, Mississippi, actually co-wrote it with me. Although I got the billing credit, she definitely, I couldn't have done it without her. I couldn't have done it without my core team, Allison J. Davis out of New Jersey, who actually is one of the founders of NABJ, right?
Oh, the National Association of Black Journalists.
Correct. She was a producer, a woman named Dr. Carrie Ann Sweet. So it was every week, every Monday, Zoom calls for pre-production, then production. And then once we got it's time to go into editorial, we had to turn it around in less than 8 weeks. So
is this streaming anywhere so people can, is it on, well, I know Maynard is, or it used to be streaming on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure if it's still available.
It is. When it was first released, it was on Netflix, and now it's on Amazon Prime. The Invitation, because honestly, I don't own the film. It is owned by Links Incorporated, and that's what they are doing now, is constructing their distribution plan. Let me say this. These are not just, how do I be diplomatic with this? These are a lot of chiefs. The links are not a lot of Indians.
I understand. I totally understand that.
Well, let's be clear.
Yeah. Right.
Some of these women are CEO. I mean, even the CEO of ARP,
Yeah.
the CEO
Yes.
of Crystal Media. These are,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So even the vice president of the United States is a link. Stacey
Right.
Abrams is a link. Misty Copeland is a link.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm letting they do what they do.
Right. And you're in your lane.
I'm in my lane. And I know I'm very good at that. There's no white or yellow marks on my shoe for crossing over.
But we could possibly, we should look out for the movie The Invitation on some streaming service, maybe in the near future.
Yes, in 2023.
So do you have any projects that you are working on now that you can talk about?
Yes, I do. For 4 years, I've been working on a documentary called Counting the Ballots. And Counting the Ballots is about not just voter suppression, but the polarization of the voter base out of the state of Georgia, right?
Oh. Wow.
And so we followed Stacey before everybody else knew who Stacey Abrams was. Stacey Abrams in 2018 to her loss to Brian Kemp, but that gives rise and it energizes putting the first Jewish and Black US senators, her machine, if you will, the architecture of that, of course, into the United States Senate, to her running again and unfortunately not winning, but it's still being the anchor base to getting every single ballot counted, not just in Georgia, but across what the effects of that election creates, the people understanding the crucial, how crucial it is to count every single ballot. So I've been working on that for 4 years. We should have it wrapped up maybe in April, and that's directed by myself and Elisa Gambino, who had done Welcome to Pine Lake for CBS, and it's executive.
Oh wait, Pine Lake, Georgia, like that little town.
Yeah, I did a documentary on that too. That's streaming on Paramount Plus right now.
Oh wow! Like that's the place that we technically were not supposed to be driving through.
Right.
Got it. All right.
The whole documentary. Here's my plug. It's streaming now. Please watch Welcome to Pine Lake. Streaming on Paramount Plus now. I executive produced that. So, but that's
just
what I'm
so people know that Pine Lake is, it's I'm gonna call it a city, but it's not. It's probably like a municipality more so, within the city of Atlanta, kind of, or the metro area, I'll say. And when I first moved to Atlanta in 1993. People would talk about Pine Lake as they did Avondale Estates, like they were racially profiling Black people and pulling them over. And I think now Pine Lake is predominantly Black.
I think of maybe almost 900 residents. They probably have 30 Black people.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
What's different is the residents are mostly white, but the business, it's like one traffic light.
Yeah, right.
Is Black. And one of the things, it's an observational documentary, but one of the things that we were able to see is that the cities, a lot of its economic engine depended on,
that profile. Yeah.
That profiling. Yeah. And that wasn't anything new. That had been going on. It made the news back in the 60s.
Sure.
So the mayor was very resentful. She still is, of us doing that. But my thing was, where's the lie? And I'm not saying that they're not working hard to making some changes, but let's just say
it's
that
2022 and like pick up the pace. Like, yeah, right. I wholeheartedly. I'm sorry, what did you say?
And I'm writing now for Hallmark a movie, and I've written a limited series about Ella Fitzgerald and Marilyn Monroe, their relationship and sisterhood, with a woman. I co-wrote it with a woman named Gigi Lavangi, and I adapted a New York Times bestseller, 30 Days, a Black Man, The Forgotten Story of Jim Crow.
Oh,
with another guy named Richard Dresser. So I've been very busy.
good, good,
Yeah.
good, good. Okay, so I have some because we're approaching the hour and I only scheduled this for an hour. I have some fun questions for you.
Okay.
What is your cocktail order?
Sidecar made with cognac, not bourbon.
Oh, wow, okay. I would have never guessed that about you.
Yes, honey. Brown liquor.
What is your favorite place to travel or vacation?
Number one would be Italy.
Okay.
Number two would be Paris.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I fell in love with Rome and in Venice. I took my kids years ago and we stayed for about a month. But yeah, number one would be Rome, number two would be Paris, number three would be London.
Oh, nice. Okay. I've never been to Rome. I've been to Florence. I stepped my foot in Florence. Just like I had a friend who lived in Switzerland for a year. He worked there, and we drove to Florence just to go shopping one day. But that's about. I've always wanted to go to Italy. I've just been saving it for when I meet someone, and that's going to be something we can do together. But
Right.
you know, I probably will die before that happens, but we'll see. What is your greatest extravagance?
Oh God.
Are you looking over your shoulder to look for Buzzy?
No, I'm just almost ashamed. So I didn't grow up with like things, but when your dad's a pilot, you get a chance to really travel.
Yeah.
Airfare, Delta.
Oh, okay.
I'm hashtag Delta proud.
Okay.
500%.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
eat a banana and oatmeal every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner to make sure I have my flights.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Like are we talking about like Delta One extravagance or Delta? Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Got it. and for those of you, what'd you say?
Hashtag Delta proud.
For those people that are watching that don't know what Delta One is, you can Google it and see for yourself what Delta One is.
Don't judge me. Some people like Gucci, some people like Delta.
Well, yeah, we all have our stuff, right? Like everybody has something that they just can't do without. And I'm kind of with you. Like I don't like I'm not a Delta One person. Like my budget won't allow for that. But you know, like if I can't at least be in business class, if I'm going on a 6 hour, I don't really want to go. Like,
right. Let me say this: not over 50 and put me in a seat.
Oh my God!
You know.
Yeah, like that's not gonna work. That is not gonna work. So yeah, and I have to figure it out. Like you, like, okay, so I'll be having granola bars for breakfast, lunch, and dinner just to make it happen. So
absolutely, I've spent a lot of money on airfare, and as a result, you know, the whole uproar about what's going on with Delta now is just like, y'all need to get an Amex Platinum card because
that's right.
You're gonna stick with Delta. That's gonna be your ticket.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Because you can earn those miles faster, and you yeah, it's actually that's a really good point. The Amex Platinum or the is it called the reserved card?
So the Delta Sky Amex Reserve. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Those two are like must if you like to fly Delta and if you like access to their lounge, like at one point I was just paying for the membership of the lounge, just not, which, you know, if I read that correctly, those people will still have access to the, like if you pay for the membership.
Executive, that's considered executive membership. It's just that the fees are going up. It's going to be close to $50 a year.
But it's totally worth it just to have the peace and quiet and the free drinks and the food and
the food.
And to stretch out and just have some space to yourself.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I have enjoyed this, and I appreciate you coming on and us having a conversation, and it's good
Me
seeing you.
too.
And I told my mom that you all will be in Florida over the holidays.
Yes.
So we might drive over. I don't know.
And I would love to see my Lily. Lily doesn't age. Lily's gonna be fabulous no matter what. I love that.
Please don't tell her that, because you know she thinks that. And it's like, oh God.
But where's the lie? She is right. This has been so much fun, Scott. I appreciate you, and I feel honored that you would even choose me to have a conversation with. So thank you.
I mean, it's my pleasure. Like I appreciate our history and our just being family. Like it's one of the things, and just so everyone knows, like Wendy and I don't really talk all that often, but the thing that I do know is that when we call each other, we pick up the phone and answer, and she's always on the other end, and I'm always on the other end, and it's like time has not stopped, and that is, for me, that is truly what family is. Like I don't have to speak to someone every single day for them to know that I love them, and I don't feel like, and the same is true for me. Like I feel love from Wendy, and I hope she feels the same from me.
Oh, absolutely. I would not have it any other way. I've got great pictures I've got to send you of us down at Pop Moore's house. This is down in Elba, Alabama. And
At the family reunion?
At the family reunion, but I think we had gone to see, didn't we go to see like the Jacksons? Because we all got on this Jackson 5
Oh,
shirt.
we did in Jacksonville.
In Jacksonville.
Yes. We did, because remember Jeanette rented that bus, that mini bus, and Dexter and Regina went. Like it was a bunch of us that went.
It was I still have those pictures. I've got to send them.
That's crazy. All right. Well, enjoy your day. I know you have to go teach a class, and I have some things to do here. Please tell Buzzy I said hello, and thank you again.
Thank you. Mwah. Love you. Mean it.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.